A good afternoon, and thank you very much for your attention, and also thank you very much for the organizers for setting up this workshop. I'm really happy to give you an inside look into my current research. Please keep in mind that everything I show you is basically work in progress, so there might be changes down the line or so. But yeah, I want to start with pointing you towards a paper that was published last year where we were able to show first results, initial results of a previous project of mine where we worked on two case studies for two sites in the so-called Western Congo Basin, so in Central Africa, and then three sites in the inner Congo Basin, so you see the Congo River and then all its confluences. At these five sites, we were able to already give a broad overview of mineralogical variability, defined petrofabrics, so that you see a selection of those here on the left, with fine fabrics on the top row. Then there's grog tempering present. There is plant matter in there. There are different mineralogical constituents in there. We also conducted a first chemical survey using a handheld XRF to differentiate or look into the chemical composition of potsherds, and found that there is a correlation between the petrofabrics and the chemistry. So this group is a distinct petrofabric, and these are basically all the rest. So these are the fine fabrics, and this is more of a coarser material, and grog and everything is in here. You also see here an overview about like chronological changes, but I really wanted to give you a chance to maybe give it a look, as it is a bit of a starting point of my work. But really what I'm doing right now is focusing on exchange networks and local production or centralized production. I will come to that. First, a bigger map now. You see again the Congo River here, and then the Ubangi River in the north. So yeah, the main, and on the map here you see the modern potash production as it was documented during the 1980s. Of importance is here the green group. So I didn't plot all the sites where this kind of pottery was found. I just made this shape from it. But in that region, pottery was found that is associated with a potter's village here on the Ruki River, where a community was working by drawing of a ring/lump techniques with pounding and paddling. Then further to the east, on the Upper Maringa River and the Chopper River, you find there was a distinct differently pottery production found, where pounding happened on a mat. In the north, pounding in a concave mold technique was observed. There are cases where coiling was observed in the Western Congo Basin. Here you have like two groups with largely or roughly the same distribution area, but with different kind of production modes. So a very varied landscape in terms of pottery production nowadays. And now the question is, how does that look into, if we try to look into the archaeological past? So for that, a starting point obviously is a paper published in 2021 in Science Advances, where we looked into the changes in human activity in the entirety of Central Africa through the past 2.5 millennia. Here, this is just a crop of a bigger figure. The red and bluish bars you see are the results of some probability distributions of radiocarbon dates and their modeling using the R-Carbon software. So the red ones are like so-called bust phases, and the bluish ones designate boom phases, so where there's a heightened activity. But we also found that if we looked into the distribution areas of pottery styles during those or their changes during the millennia, we found certain patterns of homogeneity and regionalization, always like following one of each other. So you have like phases like here around 200 BCE and in the 12th century CE, where there are like distinct pottery styles that are found in a large region. And then after that, you have a phase of regionalization where like the distribution area usually declines. So that gave like the main research question I am studying right now. So in what times and what regions, what pottery styles were produced in a centralized manner or in local production, then with a translocal knowledge transfer. On the bottom here, you see the entire set of samples I work with. So I have now a very, very wide sampling set. Um, Now getting into the preliminary results in terms of petrofabrics, I was now able to distinguish more petrofabrics than before. Here on the right-hand side, I put all these fine fabrics with sponge spicules. Um, then I differentiated like in terms of how many sponge spicules are there. There's also a group where there's less sponge spicules in the samples. And then I also differentiated if how the birefringence of the fine fraction is, if there is no or there is really this distinct birefringence. And here on the left-hand side, you see the fabrics that are distinguished by not having sponge spicules. So everything else, you have like a quartz sandstone rich group. You have a group with full of mica, very interestingly, like these very intense blue, homogeneous blue interference colors in XPL. There are like I stands for igneous rock fragments. I will show you that those on a map where those are. And then two groups with grok temper. In total, I have around 200 thin sections. Only 30 of them are still in production, but this is like now a very interesting or workable framework for me. If we now look at these results from the mineralogical classification on a map, here again in red you see all these very fine fabrics with sponge spicules, and you see that they are predominant in the inner Congo Basin here, really. Whereas then only on the outskirts, basically of the basin, you see other petrofabrics emerging. So this Q is for quartz, quartz dominated. In green, you see a few here in the northeastern Congo Basin, where you have like these igneous rock fragments, which makes sense. Like the Precambrian bedrock here is pretty close, so that's okay. And then like the mica-rich group, there's a bit here, and then like a lot of samples here. And you see also on the chronology, you see certain correlations that distinct styles. Every bar here is a chronological span of a certain pottery style, and then usually within a style, the petrofabric is homogeneous. So there's a distinctness of selection procedures and specific choices. But that makes it important to differentiate that a bit further. I will go to the preliminary chemical data in a bit. First, I wanted to show you, talk a bit more about like the sponge spicules I mentioned quite a lot. So these are very clear signs of the usage of fluvial clays. Here you see an image from a thin section on a high magnification. We can see like these isotropic rods with the cannelure in the center, very typical. But it's not only, or you don't only need to review those in thin sections. It's also able with a refracted light microscope to identify those on the surfaces of the shirts already. You see an image here, so also you already see these maybe 100, 200 micron long rods. Interestingly is here, if we look at the land cover data from the region, and here I plotted only sites on this map where um, samples show these sponge spicules in them, and you already can see that obviously a lot of the sites are located in this bluish greenish land cover region. This is like swamp forest, and also like if you look and then at the distribution of it, it's like a positive um, deviation from what would be expected in terms if the sites would be randomly distributed. So there is a clear selection that in these swamp forests, these kind of freshwater sponges are predominant. and then they end up in the clay source or in the source clay. Now to come to the preliminary geochemical data in terms of the modern potash productions. Um, Again, this is only like 100 out of roughly 350 samples that I was able to measure up to now. I will do the rest in the coming weeks. But you already can see that there are some patterns. So here in panel C, you see in gray the background, all the data present. You can see that, for example, Ikenge here, the green one I showed you on the big map before, these samples are pretty close together. There's an outlier here. Interestingly, these orange brown ones here in the Western Congo Basin, they have a big variety in terms of chemistry. The red ones in the north also, they are rather found together. There's just one outlier. I need to look into that. But this already gives me an idea to see like, okay, these chemical signals, they are, when I know the provenance, it usually holds together. Now, in terms of can I differentiate local versus centralized production? I show you two examples. One is from the so-called Mbonga, the oldest pottery in the region, where you see all the samples have like mineralogically. Here you see an MCA plot from the mineralogical classification. They are pretty much close by, but chemically they are very varied. So this would be, in my interpretation, more like a local production with a translocal knowledge transfer. Whereas like in the Bondongo style I showed you also earlier, I mentioned also earlier, mineralogically the samples I studied are also very close together, and I see two distinct clusters in the chemical data. So here it's a bit more, maybe 2 villages or so. This is again really preliminary. And as a last slide, to bring it to a close, I also looked into how can I model this in a way that I get a bit more of a quantification out of it. So for doing that, I used the mean Euclidean distance from a group centroid, so from within the chemical data, using the beta dispersion function within the R-vegan package, and that gives me like a bit of a proxy for the homogeneity or heterogeneity of of the chemical um, of the chemical variability within a pottery style, always having the pottery style as a reference group. And you can see like within Mbonga, Abondongo, there's a bigger variability because like, especially within Bondongo, there were these two clusters. So this obviously rips apart this distribution. And then like in the modern day, and I hope that in modern day, these variability goes a bit down. And I hope that with that, that I do find a way when I do have all the data to have a really clear point or a really clear way of distinguishing local production, centralized production, pottery trading, and these local knowledge networks that I am pretty sure must be somewhere. So again, this is really preliminary, and thank you very much for your attention. And yeah, if there are any questions, I'm available. Thank you.